Good morning, everyone. My name is Kajal Shetty, and I've been working with Kowai Limited for 4.5 years as Customer Relationship Manager. I'm so excited to be here, and I have the opportunity to introduce our next speaker, Kevin Lamb. Kevin is a Principal Program Manager at Microsoft Redmond and is responsible for Microsoft Azure Scheduler, Logic Apps, and Azure Resource Manager, and other services. In today's session, Kevin presents the latest updates to Logic Apps. So please welcome Kevin Lamb.
Thank you. I'm good. I'm Mike. Hello, London. All right, you guys are awake. Good. That was a great keynote. Thank you guys for coming up and talking about our application, our Azure integration services, and how you guys are innovating. It's really fantastic to hear. So today I'll be talking about what's up with Logic Apps. I'm always excited to talk about this because I get to talk about the new features that we built and what's coming next in Logic Apps. But before I do that, I want to make sure I cover Logic Apps. How many people have not used Logic Apps before? Not so many, but enough. So I'll make sure that I give a little intro before we get started and diving deep into some of the capabilities. All right. I mean, it was really great to see these keynote speakers talk about how they're rapidly innovating, in their places in retail and in finance and energy, and that's all because of the tools that we provide. We provide, a designer that's out of the box, allows you to do this rapid development, integrating these various systems. We give you the ability to have triggers which create new instances of these Logic Apps that can listen to various types of events. Those events could be a scheduled event, which is a regular recurrence, or it could be an event coming from some external system. It could be a request that you're going to invoke a new instance of a Logic App, or it could be something that's polling and listening for new data that's coming out of a data resource, like a database or a mail system. We make it really easy to connect various types of systems, not only disparate SaaS services where they have different REST APIs and you need to integrate those, but even different types of systems where you have data or you have files or you have APIs. Those APIs can be over REST or SOAP or however you need to get to them and messaging. And we abstract all the complexities around the types of messages and that formatting and what's the auth that you have to do for those. And so we make it really easy to mash up all those different systems. Where before you had to be an expert in one of those systems to understand it, now we've made that a lot easier. One of our goals has always been to democratize integration, and we believe we've accomplished that. We've eliminated the need for you to be an integration specialist to do integration. We want to make sure everybody can be an integrator. And with Logic Apps, we've enabled that. So what we've done is we've taken this designer and allowed for developers who are very used to doing their coding to now focus on the code they really care about and then leave the kind of mundane and some of the things that are it's like, I don't want to look up that API in some spec and then go figure out how to connect to it, and leave that up to us. And then we can take care of that for you, so then you have a faster time to market and getting your business done faster and killing that long tail of IT that you have running in the background. And of course, it comes with all the tools so that you can go ahead and create and deploy and monitor and manage your Logic Apps through the portal and through Visual Studio. And it's enterprise ready. Logic Apps is built at the core on ARM, right? The ARM engine is the Azure Resource Manager. That's the front door to Azure. And so using that as the core engine is what drives Logic Apps. So if it's good enough for Azure to manage all your resources, hopefully it's good enough for you guys. So, I used to show all the connectors we had in past talks, but it starts getting harder to fit all of them on the screen. So, we have almost 300 connectors now. And we keep on innovating those connectors. The connectors are the things that abstract the different services. And those services can be the SaaS services, or it could be a file system or a messaging system. And all those connectors have the same canonical way of interacting with those. And those connectors come out of the box, and you get to utilize those connectors to connect to these services. And that includes Office 365 and different Azure services and Dynamics and the PaaS services you care about, Salesforce or Twilio or Dropbox. And it also provides hybrid integration. So you can use some of those connectors to connect to entities on-prem through the on-premises data gateway. So really making that cross-hybrid solutions simple to use. You don't have to think about those complexities anymore. You also get API connections. Those API connections is what abstracts the connectivity, the configuration, and the auth to those services. And those API connections act as first-class resources that appear to your Logic app. So when you deploy those, you can deploy those together. Logic apps with API connections really allows you to keep those entities separate, so then you can work on your Logic app while somebody else goes ahead and does the authentication authorization for your connection. And then finally, we have custom connectors. So if you didn't find the connector that you need, you have some special system, or you have your own custom service that you built, and you want to have that same experience for all the other connectors for the other developers in your organization, you can build a custom connector and have it behave exactly the same way. So it can use the API connections, it can use the gateway, and have that same look and feel in the designer with the other ones. So let's see what's next. So John mentioned that we have now open source connectors. So this is a new thing that we've introduced in the last few months. I think it was at Build that we announced it, open sourcing connectors. So we have a few connectors there today, and the connector team is going to be pushing more and more of those connectors to be open source. So you can go ahead, and if there's something missing or you find something that's quirky about one of those connectors, you can go ahead and do a pull request for one of those connectors. What's next for API connections? Cross-subscription gateways. I know some of you are excited about that one. There are some organizations that have various gateways across subscriptions, and some of that is because they have requirements from IT that says you have to keep those things separate, but then it makes that a lot harder to manage. So now we're going to give you the capability so you can have a single connection go across multiple gateways, across multiple subscriptions. Before it was constrained to a single subscription. Logic Apps referencing and connection. So today we have a portal experience for managing your connections, but one of the challenges you have is you have a connection. It's like, well, who's using this connection? So one of the things we're going to do is provide a way so you can do that reverse lookup from a connection, then see which Logic Apps are using that connection, so you know if you can clean it up or if it's some developer thing or if somebody's just not using it anymore. And so it allows you to have a much cleaner experience for your connections and better management. And finally, custom connector policies. So with custom connectors, we provide an open API, so you can go ahead and write your Swagger to create your custom connector, but that has some constraints, right? Because it's only descriptive about your REST API. Sometimes you want to be able to manipulate some things with that custom connector. For example, you want to manipulate the URL that's incoming or add some headers, modify some headers on the way in. So now we're going to have some fixed set of policies out of the box, so you can add those policies to your custom connectors and then have those little tweaks that you can do that you wouldn't have available without having to write code. All right, new connectors. This is where I usually go out and, is this working? Have a smoke while this thing scrolls for a little bit. So these are the connectors that we've just released in the last 6 months. So we have 38 new connectors just in the last 6 months. So every week we're releasing new connectors. So these connectors are built by either Microsoft or by the third party that owns the service. And so they're coming to us and saying, hey, we want a connector and we want to put it onto your platform so that more people have access to our services through Logic Apps and Flow. These same connectors work in both. And because they see the value in our platform, it's getting more people to come to their service. And we have more coming. So there's one of the connectors that we have right in the hopper is SQL with AD auth. It's sitting behind a capability where we're going to enable multi-auth behind connectors, and that's one of the first ones that was going to take advantage of that capability. So we're growing. John had talked about how we were looking 4 years ago, and we were really looking to create the democratization of integration, and we've proven it. We have over 35,000 subscriptions using Logic Apps today. We have 500,000 active Logic Apps running in the service. And 4 billion actions running every day, right? 110 billion per month. That's quite a powerful platform. Remember, we have not only your Logic Apps, or for some of you that are out there, we have other services that are built on top of Logic Apps in Azure as well. They trust us to run some of their businesses. Flow builds, on top of Logic Apps. It's really a projection of Logic Apps as a SaaS service as opposed to a PaaS service. But it's built on top of Logic Apps. We have, Azure Data Factory is built on top of Logic Apps for doing some of its long-running processing. And there's a number of other partners that build on top of Logic Apps, but it's our engine that's running all that around the world. So we're in 29 regions around the world today, and we're growing. So in the next few months, we're going to add 10 new regions. So that's going to include places like France and UAE and South Africa and Korea, and more in the US Gov for defense contractors. We're going to go into the US Gov DoD. So we're constantly innovating. So one of the things that we try to do is Azure is always moving to these new data centers, and we're just trying to keep up with Azure. And our goal is to, as more data centers come out in Azure, we'll be in the same data centers soon after those go public. So integrating with Logic Apps. So this is kind of the heart of what we have in Logic Apps. Service orchestration. So as you think about your integration, there are certain capabilities you expect out of your integration platform as a service. Of course, we have our designer that can allow you to quickly develop and architect your services and do the orchestration, but you can go to code view if you'd like to write in our DSL and JSON, you can go ahead and do that as well. We provide concurrency control. So out of the box, Logic Apps is a highly parallelized system. So as events come into Logic Apps, we create multiple instances of those Logic Apps to handle all those in parallel, as well as things for like for each loops. We optimize by parallelizing all the instances of the entities in an array that goes through a for each loop. But you have control over that. There's some scenarios where you need order delivery, so you can do sequential processing and you can control that concurrency yourself. Scheduling. A lot of people don't realize that Logic Apps is actually kind of at its core a scheduling service. And with that scheduling service, you get the kind of the basic capabilities of recurrence, but then you can do recurrence for every hour or 5 minutes or every day. But you can do advanced schedules. So I want the last and first Friday of every other month at 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. to have an instance of my Logic App kickoff. And so we have a lot of different customers using that to drive a lot of their recurrent entities in the backs of their services. Error handling. If it's not so obvious, but one of the things that we've tried to do is with that democratization of integration is keep the design surface as easy as possible to use. But there's a lot of power behind that service and that designer. And for example, you can do error handling. So you can have try-catch scenarios so that in case something fails, you get to go and handle those scenarios and do a try-catch family pattern, for example. Long running. You saw in Daniel's demo how he was interacting with a bot, right? And so that Logic App executes, kicks off a request, and then sits and waits for a response. So it can be months, before a response comes back, and that Logic App will sit in there and wait. And you didn't have to do anything to figure that out. You just have it wait. There's a webhook, and it calls back, and then it continues where it left off. Imagine having to write that yourself. So we make that really easy, and we do long running. We do anything from milliseconds to months, right? Your Logic App can live for that long. And of course, with any integration platform, you need good message handling. So we have different messaging protocols. So via REST and SOAP, and talking to different, you have SMTP, being able to talk to different systems require these different messaging protocols. You can talk to service bus and queues, right, for those systems. We handle different message types or just types in general. You can go from JSON to XML to some flat file format or some binary that you need to pass along. Logic Apps can handle all those message types. Communication patterns. So as you think about more complex integrations, you need to think about these types of communication patterns. One is you can do sync on async, or asynchronous communication, or disconnected communication, right? All that's possible with queues and the different types of response patterns that you can get with HTTP, and it's all supported by our engine. And of course, message architectural patterns. So if you want to do something super complex, like, sorry? Sequential convoy. A BizTalk guy talking here. Yes. So a sequential convoy, you can do that in Logic Apps. So sequential convoy is the ability to have a queue with sets of different types of messages that need to be processed in order, but then you can still parallelize those sets across the different instances of Logic Apps, and that can be handled to something a bit more straightforward as just in-order delivery, right? This is a more complex flavor of in-order delivery. That can be handled by Logic Apps. Data wrangling. Data wrangling really means being able to pull data from different data sources. You think about SQL and NoSQL and file systems are all different types of data sources where you can pull your data, right? You can pull something from Excel and stick it into a SQL database. And you don't have to understand, what the COM interface is for Excel to go figure that stuff out, right? It's all handled by Logic Apps in a very straightforward manner. And of course, as you do more business-to-business integration, we have the ability to do trading partner management and EDI, so Edifact, X12, and AS2, all out of the box with our integration accounts and Logic Apps. And we make that way easier than it used to be. Monitoring. So in Logic Apps, one of the great abilities that it has is, as you build and design your Logic app, when it executes, then you get a run history. So you can see all the different, the trigger history and the run histories for the trigger events. But then you also get to see, for that particular run, the flow that it stepped through in that particular instance, and then you get to see the inputs and outputs of every single step. We store everything that comes into Logic Apps in every call that we make out. So you don't have to add your own extra persistence to go ahead and understand what's happening in your system, because it's right out of the box, we give you that. And with diagnostics, you get to do alerting with Azure Monitor. So if your Logic app has been failing consistently for the last 5 minutes, go raise an alert, and then you can get alerted about something going on with your Logic apps. Tracking. So we give the ability for you to push data to Log Analytics, and then Log Analytics, you get to amend that data with your own business tracking information. So the information that goes to Log Analytics is all the steps and things that have occurred in your Logic app, but you want to be able to add business data to that, you can with our tracking API and tracked resources that we have. And then finally, instance management. Anytime you have a system, you may want to, you run into an error and you have to resubmit a particular request. Some backend system was down and that instance failed, the system came back up, and you want to be able to go ahead and resubmit those requests. And finally, security. So, Logic Apps is a first-class Azure resource, and we take advantage of the capabilities that come with Azure. Being that first-class resource, you get role-based access control. With Logic Apps, you get auditing. So anybody makes a change to that Logic app, that gets audited. Static IP addresses and IP constraints. So you can control, right, we give you the set of IP addresses that the Logic Apps calls from, and then you get to control when somebody's calling into Logic App which IP addresses can actually call it. You can roll the access key. So if you have a request trigger or an endpoint, you can go ahead and roll the access key in case that it was compromised, or you just have policies that say it needs to be updated every 30 days. You get to go do that. And everything is encrypted at rest. So you don't have to worry about your data being readable by anybody, because it's always encrypted at rest and on the wire. But, okay, so that was kind of the overview of Logic Apps. And I really didn't do it justice. There's a lot more that can go there. And I originally wrote this deck. I threw out about 20 slides because I only have 45 minutes. But there's a lot of power. And sometimes I give talks about just certain sets of architectural patterns that we can do. But I'm really here to tell you what's new. What have we done in the past few months, and what are we going to be doing next? Dramatic pause. Okay, that worked. So, in service orchestration area. So, one of the things that we recently released is a sliding window trigger. I won't talk about it too much because we're going to have Derek talk about that. There's a few features that I'm going to give the limelight to our future talkers about the capabilities. But sliding window triggers is a new means by which you can do window-based schedules. And Derek will have a whole bunch of stuff on static sliding window triggers. Static results. So static results allows you to mock the outputs of your actions. And I'll be giving a demo of this in a little bit so that you can test different code paths, or as you're doing some other testing, you don't want to call a backend system because it may cost you money, or you don't have access to that system during testing or development, so you can go ahead and mock those results with static results. But what's coming next? Better type handling. So one of the things that we try to do in Logic Apps for the designer is we try to guess at what your intent is with the types of parameters that come back, and so we do some handling for you. So we're going to be improving that experience and the type handling, because we'll rely more on the open API and the types that come back and be a bit more predictive about how we do type handling. Create with config and template. So we're going to revamp the create experience for Logic Apps so that at creation time you get to configure some of the data right at create time, as well as pick your template or trigger that you want right at create. So instead of creating it, then after the fact coming and starting from a blank Logic App, you get to have a pre-built Logic App right from the create experience. And this is my favorite one because everybody always asks me for it, so you can stop asking me for it. It's the download the parameterized template right from the portal. So with your Logic App, you get to go click on that button, and we will go ahead and download an ARM deployment template with all the connections that you use in that Logic App, and provide you an ARM template, so then you can go ahead and redeploy that, all parameterized and ready for you to go. Yay! Wow, I got applause. Okay. Message handling. So we've recently released RosettaNet. Divya is going to talk more about RosettaNet and some of these other things that are coming up. But we also have EDI core connectors, new and next. Again, I'm going to leave that to Divya to talk about. But some exciting things happening in that B2B space, around RosettaNet and EDI. One of the things that we worked really closely with the blockchain team to create the blockchain development kit. And Logic Apps was really at the core of that capability with the Ethereum connector and all their designs for being able to connect to these various systems, because the blockchain isn't very interesting if you can't integrate with different services and data stores, et cetera. And so we worked with the blockchain team to help them create that development kit. And we're going to continue working with the blockchain team to have more integration of blockchain right into the integration accounts and into Logic Apps. So then you can start envisioning the future of B2B. And so for those who have classic B2B integrations, if you're using Edifact or X12, for example, you get to now extend into your consortium and go from the old school into the modern world of blockchain, or just go right into blockchain from the get-go. And so you get to use your ledgers and et cetera, from blockchain. So we're going to have some great first-class experiences coming up for blockchain. Is that exciting? I'm excited about that one. Service bus with claim check. Woohoo. This is a highly asked for, some claps for that one, highly asked for feature. So we're going to extend the service bus connector so that we take advantage of some of the service bus extensibility to go ahead and provide a claim check pattern out of the box with service bus. And then an MQP action. So we're going to have, kind of as part of the engine, the ability to talk to service bus and other AMQ endpoints as a first-class experience, right out of the engine. So just like your HTTP action, we'll have an AMQP action that will be able to go and talk to those AMQP endpoints. Cool. All right. What else? Monitoring. So one of the things that we released recently was the batch trigger tracking. So there was just a piece that was missing in our tracking story where the batch trigger wasn't emitting the data to our tracking store. Now it is. So it goes to Log Analytics, so you get to see what's happening with your batches. One of the things we're going to work on next is Azure Advisor. So then we can give you some suggestions about your Logic app. If it's running, how to make it more efficient, for example, and we'll have different sets of rules and keep on extending those Azure Advisor capabilities for your Logic app. And then resubmit from action. So today you can resubmit from the trigger, right? So resubmit your workflow. But sometimes you don't want to execute a few steps because it was only a step right at the end of your Logic app or in the middle that's failed, and you don't want to redo the other one. So you can now resubmit, not now, next, resubmit from a particular action in your Logic app. And security. So we're really, took a strong pivot on security, and we're trying to create more and more capabilities in this area because we know it's important to everybody to do that. One of the things that we added in the past few months was system-assigned managed identity. So the Logic app itself has an identity, so you can use that identity to go and authorize that Logic app as opposed to a person to go talk to a system. But that's only the beginning. One of the things that we're working on is secret inputs and outputs, what we call obfuscation as our internal code name. So then, as you have secrets coming out from a particular action, you get to secure those outputs so that nobody in the, remember I said everything that gets, all your actions get logged. So when it comes back in your monitoring view, you get to see all that stuff in clear text. So sometimes you don't want to do that either because it's PII or if it's a secret, a password or something. So we're going to allow you to have secret inputs and outputs, and we'll allow you to set that on your Logic app. Connector multi-auth. So that was I talked about the SQL with AED. So our connectors now will support multi-auth, so you can have multiple authentications within your connection. User-assigned managed identity. So I said we had system-assigned, so now with AED provides you user-assigned identities. We will support user-assigned identities in Logic Apps, so you can create one identity, associate it to your Logic app, and then just authorize that user-assigned AED identity you created. And so it's going to make your integrations a lot easier. And then connections with managed identities. This is kind of like the goal for all this managed identity stuff, which is on your connection. So let's say I'm connecting to ARM. I want to be able to use these managed identities that I've now associated with my Logic app to go ahead and authenticate with these systems. So we're going to expose our managed identities through creating the API connections first-class resource as well. And then finally, OAuth request endpoint. So today you get to call the request trigger, and that request trigger takes a SAS token in the URL. And what we're going to do now is take a token instead of that SAS URL, so then you can do OAuth and eventually RBAC on that request. And so therefore simplifying your URL and then creating different security options for you to lock down that request trigger. Is that enough? That's pretty cool. Okay. So let's do a demo. Who wants to see some new stuff? Yeah, all right. I'm going to create a Logic app from scratch. So when you first create a Logic app, this is the first experience you see. And you get to see a bunch of triggers that you get to pick from, as well as a number of out-of-box templates that help you get started or see patterns for how you do particular activities. So I'm going to create one from scratch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and listen to messages on Service Bus. You guys are all integration experts. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And so I figured I'd do something that's more integrate-y. Since you saw that cool bot thing that was done earlier, let's do something more classic and do messaging. So I'm going to do when a message is received with the peak lock. And this gives me a nice hint. It's like, hey, don't forget to release your lock when you're done. Complete your message. Thank you. So I'm going to listen to my integrate queue, and I'm going to listen every 30 seconds. So Service Bus does a long poll for every 30 seconds. You don't need to go any faster than 30 seconds to get immediately informed that there's a new message waiting for you. So the simplest Logic app you can create is one, for receiving a message is on Service Bus, is get the message and then complete the message in a queue. So then I go ahead, pick my queue name. So you can see how fast this is. So everybody understands my queues, and I'm going to pick the lock token as a token for my parameter and go ahead and do that. And so this is the simplest messaging. Well, actually, there's a simpler one, but a simplest message you can do. So it receives the message, then completes the message, and then continues. But that's not so interesting. So now we actually want to do some work in between there. So I'm going to add an action. So what I want to do is do work, right? So in that work, I'm going to add a scope. And that scope says, I want to do all these activities in the scope. And so I'm going to call, for the purpose of the demo, I'm just going to call some HTTP endpoint. And I'm going to do a post on some random URI. And I'm going to pass in. Now, one of the things I know is that Service Bus passes the messages in binary. So we have a rich expression capabilities in Logic Apps. So I can do a decode base 64, and then go ahead and pass the content from there to. So okay, so now anything that I pass is now going to be sent to this HTTP endpoint, and voila, I now have a simple Logic app that does that. But sometimes messages fail, right? The HTTP request can fail, and how do I go ahead and handle that? So what we can do now is try to do a catch block. So I'm going to go ahead and add a parallel branch. So right now you can see the richness of our service where you can do parallelism. I'm going to rename this to catch. And in my catch block, I'm going to say, Service Bus, please dead letter this request. Dead letter message in queue. Here's my queue name, and here's the lock. My lock token, and that's it. And anytime a failure happens, I want to send ops a message saying that something went wrong. You're going to go need to investigate it. So I'm going to send an email, and I'll send it to me for now. And error in queue, and then the body is going to be the error, message had a failure sending message ID. And so here you can see how we can do simple concatenation, and we don't need to understand how to write code to go do that, because here's the message ID, and that's it. So, I've just created an integration. Super easy, right? Save that. And I send a message to it, and everything is happy. Hello, London. And that's going to send a message to the queue, and hopefully that. I didn't what? Not yet. Wait, that's not my demo. Oh, I see. Yes, thank you. See, you guys paying attention. So he just noticed that I didn't actually, make the catch a catch statement. All right. That's good. See, that would have messed up my demo. So in this, we have this configure run after, and this is what determines that on a failure path. So instead of is successful, I'm going to say has failed, is skipped, or has timed out. So anything that's not a success, please go execute this path. I said done. Now I'm going to get an email, but that's OK. So I'm going to save that. But this goes ahead and executes. And so if I go look at my run history, this should have succeeded. And it goes through, and you can see through my monitoring view that I have, oops, that was my old one. Let not go. And let's make sure it's cooking. 10:30. I'll send another one. That's OK, because I can do that. So one of the things I wanted to show was now the rich capabilities that we have by design, that we have with the capabilities that we have. So I dead lettered a message I shouldn't have because I completed it. That was the mistake that he caught. So what I'm going to do now is show you two things. Go to my edit. And the first thing I want to show is static results. So in my scope, I'm going to say, hey, instead of executing this endpoint, I want to make sure I'm going to try and force it to do this catch. So I'm going to enable static results, and I'm going to say failed, and I get to add different fields, and I'm going to say, go ahead, the error code, invalid internal server error, done. And so now what this is going to do, instead of calling my HTTP endpoint, it's going to say fail, and now you get to see the failure path that's going to get executed through that. Also, when my system goes, I don't want to get an email every time I'm doing testing. So instead of calling this email endpoint, I get to go and say, hey, please add static results to this guy, and just say it succeeded, and we're done. So now instead of calling this email and me getting flooded with emails, I'm doing my testing, it will just go ahead and say, I pretended I called you and just succeeded, and continues. And so you can now see this little beaker says it has static results. So one of the other things I want to show you, and this is the new thing, is this endpoint actually requires a secret. So I'm going to go ahead and add key vault. And with key vault, I'm going to do a get secret. My name is secret, demo secret. And then I'll use my username and password. So I'm going to say this has basic auth, and this is me, and my password is the value from key vault. Now, the challenge with this is if I actually go ahead and execute it, you'll see my secret in that monitoring view, right? So you got to see all the inputs and outputs in that monitoring view. So what I'm going to do now, dun, 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 never seen before. Everybody's excited? Settings. Secure outputs. Dun, dun, dun. So I'm going to set those secure outputs, and now what's going to happen is that you won't get to see that secret that's coming out or whoever's referencing that output. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and so we'll see that this will go ahead, and I'm going to go execute this. If I've done everything right, demo gods are with me. I will see that. Nope, the wrong one. Refresh. Come on, demo gods. Let's go run that trigger. Make sure it's running. Everybody get off of Wi-Fi. Okay. Why aren't you with me today? This is looking at the old instance. Wi-Fi. Hello, Wi-Fi. No, this is the old instance. Okay. Interesting. Send that again. And come on, I'm running out of time. Oh, failed. Good, because I forced it to fail. That's actually a good thing. Right? So what you'll see is get secret. What's my secret? Loading, anticipation. Anticipation, come on. Get off of Wi-Fi. This is much faster in my hotel room. So while that's loading, I don't know why it's taking so long. This failed on purpose, right? Because I told my HTTP action to fail, and it failed with this internal error, internal server error, and then went down this path, and it faked sending me an email, so the Logic App instance failed by design. But this is kind of my big bang. Where's my secret? Where's not my secret, I should say. Well, it's really a secret because you can't see it, right? Okay. So, I'll reopen it. So last chance, because I got to get to the rest of my talk. Come on, I want to see the secret. I might have to give up because I got to do the rest of my talk. Still loading. Okay, devs, get off my stuff. Okay, I'm going to come back here. It's going to show. But now we have secure output. So it's not released yet. This is, our devs are working on it. And soon we're going to release this to the rest of the world. But it's in the kind of final polish. And so you're going to see that really soon. And especially here in this demo, you'll see it really soon. OK, let's get back to the talk. Cool stuff, huh? Yeah, all right. OK, so we have, for the developers, we have support in Visual Studio. So Visual Studio has the ability to, in the resource group project, to go ahead and incorporate a logic app as part of an ARM template. And so we piggyback on top of that resource manager project in Visual Studio to go ahead and you can go ahead and interrogate that template and then see that there's a logic app in it, and the designer comes up and you get to work right into Visual Studio against your logic apps. So this group project in Cloud Explorer allows you to go ahead and reach out to the cloud and see the instances that are up there and manage them, see different runs, et cetera, right from Visual Studio. And then we have our EIP tools, which is the XML flat file parsing, the schema editor, and XSLT mapper that's in Visual Studio as well. But we have recently released support for Visual Studio 2019. So the resource group project in Cloud Explorer is now in Visual Studio 2019. And we're right now developing the support for the integration service environment, so then you can deploy from Visual Studio to your ICE as well. I'll be talking about that in a bit. And EIP tools are coming to Visual Studio 2019. Yeah, all right. Yes. We just skipped a version, so. VS Code. Derek is going to talk a lot about VS Code in the next one, but we released VS Code so that you get to edit your resources and have a designer-only view in VS Code, and we will be doing a Logic Apps project. So then you'll have, instead of just a Cloud Explorer view where you get to look at stuff that's already deployed, you'll actually create a project which will then be tightly integrated with DevOps. Derek will go into that stuff. And then inline code. This is a new capability that we released in preview at Build. Where it allows you, where you initially did inline JavaScript, so now right inside of your code, inside of your Logic app, you get to write a few lines of code and go ahead and do that. So instead of having to write a function, go out and build a function app and build your function and deploy that, you get to write your code right in line in your Logic app. And this is not to replace functions. Functions has its still great way to have code that you need to go and constantly reference in different places, and as you get to more complex code, go use functions for that. But if you only have a few lines of code where you want to manipulate a message, you get to go ahead and do that right in inline code. And we'll be supporting more languages and packages. Again, Derek will be going rich into all that stuff, so I'll leave that hoop out to him. So we do hybrid integration. So it's really important, as you heard from our keynote speakers, how hybrid integration is really key to their capabilities and being able to connect to systems on-prem. Logic Apps is at the core of that. You take the power of Azure, including the AI that we have in Azure and the rest of the Azure integration services, and really take that power of Azure as your integration platform, and then use Logic Apps to go ahead and stitch all those together. Then, of course, taking advantage of Microsoft 365 and the other SaaS services that are out there, blending those into a single orchestration, and then reaching down on-prem through your on-premises data gateway to entities like SAP and your existing BizTalk server or SQL server or SharePoint server, et cetera, on-prem. And you can do all that with our cloud service in a serverless manner today. But we recently released something called the Integration Service Environment. HETB was just talking about how they're using that as a core, and H&M was talking about how they're going to use that for their core platform. How many people are familiar with the ICE? Some of you, yes. So ICE, the Integration Service Environment, gives you VNet connectivity to your service. So it does VNet injection into your VNet, so you can take advantage of your express route or other connectivity to your resources. It gives you a private, dedicated environment to run your Logic apps. So then you don't have any noisy neighbors. You get to party on that thing as much as you want. And it gives you your own private static IPs. We have static IPs in the multi-tenant service, but it's common IP addresses for everybody. With the ICE, it's your IP addresses. So you get dedicated, complete, and isolated storage. So particularly for those who are more security conscious and are more paranoid, you can go ahead and isolate your workloads. It's a fixed cost. So today, with serverless, you get micro billed for all of your actions. In the integration service environment, it's one flat monthly fee, and then you get to run as much as you want in the capacity of that ice. Okay, and we GA'd the integration service environment at build, so it's ready for you guys to go ahead and party on. It is GA. So going a bit into the architecture, we have the Logic Apps multi-tenant service, and it has a couple components, the Logic Apps RP, which is the management front-end connection manager, and then the two runtimes for Logic Apps and connectors. And so when you create an ICE, it creates a separate instance for you, and it creates a separate instance for your runtimes, your Logic App and connector runtime. And with that runtime, you can now connect to other entities in your VNet. So you have a VM or a VM with SQL Server or an ACE or an APIM that's hosting that VNet. You get to talk with it directly, right, from the Logic Apps. You get to talk to PaaS services that have service endpoints. So you get to lock down your PaaS services to say, hey, only this subnet, which is the subnet that the Logic Apps engine's running in, can go ahead and access those resources. So for Service Bus or things like SQL Azure and storage provide those capabilities. And we have core ICE connectors for that. And of course, it can connect to your entities on-prem across ExpressRoute or your VNets to your entities on-prem, if you're connected to that VNet. And even though that you're getting to use this isolated stuff, you still get to use the shared set of connectors that are out there. If you want to continue talking to Office 365 or Twilio or whatever, Salesforce, that's not participating in your VNet, you still have access to those connectors. So there are connectors that kind of run inside the environment, and then the shared connectors that run outside, you still have access to. You can run that. And your custom connectors run inside that environment. So then if you have web services that are on-prem, you get to talk to that through your custom connector that's running in your ICE. So the base unit, when we released ICE at build, we doubled the capacity for the base unit and the additional processing units. So you get to 160 million actions, give or take, per month. And that comes with a standard integration account, so you can do your B2B workloads as well as an enterprise connector. Enterprise connectors are things like SAP, MQ, IBM 3270. And of course, VNet connectivity, and you get to scale up that ICE to continue doing larger workloads. So what have we done? So when we released GA, we had faster deployment. So we increased the speed of deployments by half. So half the time it took to deploy it, we released that at GA. We added more connectors. SMTP and DB2 were added at GA. We added network health blades. You can have insights into what's going on with your network. Anytime you deploy your ICE, you may change your network and you may break some things. So we give you a dashboard to let you know what's happened and a button so in case you change your config, you get to go ahead and reset that there as well. We increased the scale limit to 10 additional instances, so now you can scale out with 10 additional scale units. We gave you high throughput limits for connectors. So in the multi-tenant service, your limits are based on connections. In the integration service environment, your limits is based on the connector. Since it's your instance, you get to go party on that connector all you want, right? So the limits is now quadrupled in many of those cases for the connector that you're talking to. We've extended the lifetime of a Logic app that runs in an integration service environment to 1 year. So your Logic app can last that long. And we allow you to access larger messages in the ICE. Is that it? I think that's it. No, one more. And increase the request response timeout to 4 minutes. So in the multi-tenant service, it's 2 minutes. We've doubled that to 4 minutes in the ICE. Again, this is your environment, so you get to take more advantage of those resources and therefore get these extended capabilities. But we're not done, because we're going to add a bunch of new things. More connectors. The file system, SAP and Oracle connectors are coming around the corner to be released in the ICE. We're going to provide a connector manager. So now you get to add and delete the connectors you want. There'll be a limited set of connectors you can do that with. But let's say you don't care about the MQ connector and you don't want it running your ICE, you get to remove it if you want. When you add the SAP connector, you're going to have to upload some packages because of licensing, and we'll allow you to do that and then give you more control and insight into what's happening with those connectors. ILB ICE. So the ICE today has the request triggers enabled so that you can communicate it from outside your VNet. We'll release an ICE that locks that down so only entities inside your VNet can talk to that request trigger. Bring your own SSL cert. So you want to be able to have your own domain name on your endpoint. Now you get to do that with your own cert. And a dev SKU. So we're going to provide you the capability to have a dev instance that's going to be much cheaper than the ICE, so that as you're doing your development processing, you get to play with the dev SKU. Of course, it will have some constrained capabilities because it's not intended to be in production, but we'll have that out so then you can go ahead and feel more comfortable throwing a bunch up there and not worrying about the cost. We're going to release the ICE to the US Gov Cloud. Today we're in most of the public regions that Logic Apps in. There's only 2 or 3 that's an exception to that, but we'll also add Gov Cloud. And we'll add the inline support, the inline code support you see in multi-tenant. That'll be coming very, very soon to ICE, so then you can do that same capabilities, probably with some more stuff in the ICE. Then you can do the multi-tenant cloud. And then finally, VS 2019 support, so that you can deploy your Logic app to the ICE from Visual Studio. That was fast. Is that a lot? That's a lot. So what I wanted to leave you with is that we're constantly innovating. And okay, so if you don't remember anything, please remember ICE. So thank you very much. I hope this was exciting for you as it was for me. We have a big year ahead of us for innovating on Logic Apps. Thank you, everybody.
Cove.co